They arrogantly mocked humans, until forced to plead for mercy on their knees. The grand assembly hall of Lyric's Prime glittered like a jewel carved from night. Its ceiling was a living dome of dark crystal that reflected the stars outside, so anyone who looked up felt small on purpose. That was the point. Every empire that sat in the ring of floating thrones wanted newcomers to feel it. The weight of age, the weight of power, the weight of being watched by civilizations that had ruled space before humanity had learned to shape metal. A thin hush moved through the chamber as the newest delegation entered. Humans, they walked instead of floating. Their boots made soft clicks on the polished platform, a sound so ordinary that it felt strange among alien silence. Their uniforms were plain compared to the jeweled armor and shimmering robes around them. They carried no ceremonial blades, no hovering banners, no living crowns. Only a small case each, sealed and simple, and the calm posture of people who had practiced this moment 1,000 times. Commander Elias Ward led them. He was not the oldest, not the loudest, not the most decorated, but he had the kind of stillness that made others glance twice. His dark hair was cut short, his eyes steady. He kept his hands behind his back, like a man who knew he was being measured and did not intend to help the judges. The council speaker, an ancient being called Veilrune, rose from a throne that looked like a ring of floating glass. Veilrune's body shifted between shapes, as if it could not decide which form best represented authority. Its voice came from everywhere at once, gentle and sharp at the same time. "Delegation of Earth," it said, using the name like a label. "You stand before the conquered of 70 worlds. Your species requests recognition as a sovereign interstellar civilization. You have been permitted entry as observers and petitioners. You will conduct yourselves with humility." Humility. The word hung in the air like a chain. Several council members made quiet sounds that humans recognized as laughter even without translation. A tall, armored figure with a crest of gold feathers leaned toward a neighbor and spoke in a language that the human interpreter tagged as open broadcast, meaning it was meant to be heard. "They breed quickly," the feathered one said, amusement dripping from every syllable. "And then they die, like mayflies who learn to build radios." More laughter, this time from several thrones. A smooth-skinned diplomat whose eyes were too far apart tilted its head and added, "Their ships are welded, welded." Imagine trusting your life to melted metal held together by hope. Commander Ward did not react. Inside his ear, the interpreter whispered the translations. The human delegation had been warned this would happen. The older civilizations always mocked newcomers, especially ones who had advanced fast. A fast-rising species made the old powers nervous, and nervous powers liked to pretend they were not nervous. Ward's gaze slid across the chamber, not as a challenge, but as a survey. He watched who laughed and who stayed quiet. He watched who looked bored and who looked sharp. He noticed the pattern of seating, certain empires placed near each other, others kept at a distance. The hall was not arranged by random tradition. It was arranged like a map of alliances, grudges, and control. His second-in-command, Ambassador Myra Chen, stood beside him. Her face was composed, but Ward saw the small tightening in her jaw. The insults were not new, but hearing them spoken openly in the center of galactic power had a way of making a person's blood heat. Ward leaned a fraction toward her and spoke softly in English, so the open broadcast would not catch it. "Let them talk. We're here to learn." Chen's eyes flicked to him. She took a slow breath and nodded once. Veilrune waved one shifting limb, and a display of light formed above the central dais. It showed a spiral of the known galaxy, marked with bright lines like veins. Human space was a tiny dot on the edge, so small it could be missed if someone blinked. "You occupy a border region," Veilrune said. "An inconvenient region, near old routes, near unclaimed systems, near hazards." Ward noticed that it did not say near opportunity. Only hazards, only inconvenience. Even the words were chosen to press humanity down. "A petition is not granted by desire," Veilrune continued. "It is granted by capability, by stability, by restraint. Your species has a reputation." At this, several council members leaned forward. The reputation had been whispered through the conquered for months. Humans were said to be stubborn, quick to adapt, dangerous in a strange way. They fought hard, made alliances quickly, and had a habit of surviving situations that should have broken them. Ward knew the rumors. Humans had met two minor civilizations on the outer edge and had refused to be bullied. They had not started wars, but they had also not bowed. To the old empires, that alone could be seen as an insult. A council member shaped like a tower of smooth stone spoke next. Its voice was slow, as if every word cost effort. "Earth delegation," it said, "you come asking to stand among us. Yet you have not been tested by the standards of the conquered." The feathered one snapped its beak. "Test them," it said eagerly. "Let them see what real civilization looks like." Another voice, softer, almost lazy. "Yes, a trial, something mild. Something that will teach humility without wasting our time." Ward's shoulders remained level, but his mind sharpened. A trial meant a trap. It always did. Tests were rarely fair when the powerful were afraid of change. Veilrune inclined its shifting head. "So be it. The conquered will offer Earth a demonstration, a proving, a measure of responsibility." A new image formed in the air, a planet pale green with clusters of small settlements. Ward recognized it immediately. It was not Earth. It was one of humanity's newer colonies, still young, still building. A cold line ran down Ward's spine, but he did not allow it to reach his face. "This is HFY 9, Veilrune said. "A world within the trade corridor of the Karov Combine." The Stone Tower diplomat spoke again. "Your colony has filed disputes regarding corridor fees, security checks, and resource tariffs. Your complaints have been persistent." Chen's eyes widened slightly, so this was not just a test. It was punishment for pushing back. The feathered council member spread its wings in a mock display of grandeur. "The trial is simple," it said. "A stress event will occur near your colony. You will manage it. If you succeed, you prove competence. If you fail, perhaps you are not ready to stand as equals." Ward listened carefully. Stress event was vague, deliberately vague. The conquered loved words that sounded polite while hiding sharp edges. Veilrune lifted a hand and the image zoomed outward. Near HFY 9 orbit, a faint cloud of debris appeared, an irregular swarm. "Micrometeoroid drift," Veilrune said. "Common in this region. It threatens orbital platforms and surface supply routes. The conquered will not intervene. You will protect your assets using only your own resources. Additionally, your communications will be limited to prevent interference with corridor traffic." Ward's thoughts moved fast. A debris swarm could be natural. It could also be guided. It could be timed to hit supply vessels to push a colony into panic, to make humans look careless and weak. "Limited communications," Chen murmured, still in English. "They want them isolated." Ward's fingers tightened behind his back, hidden from the cameras. "They want a lesson broadcast," he murmured back. "A warning to others." He looked toward the thrones again, watching faces if those beings had faces. Some looked eager, some looked bored. A few, very few, looked uncomfortable, as if they knew the test was cruel and didn't want to be associated with it. One of those quiet figures sat in shadow, its throne plain. Its species was small, almost overlooked, with eyes that blinked too often. It watched the humans without laughter. Ward stored that detail away. Quiet ones were often the most interesting. Veilrune's voice returned to the center. "You may speak," it said. "You may accept or you may withdraw your petition." Withdraw, leave. Go back to being a minor power on the edge, forced to pay whatever tariffs others demanded, forced to accept inspections, forced to be treated like a child civilization forever. Ward knew the council expected pride. They expected anger. They expected humans to argue and threaten. That would let the conquered label them as unstable. Instead, Ward stepped forward calmly. "Commander Elias Ward, representing the Terran Union," he said in clear, simple, basic, the shared trade language. "Humanity accepts the trial," the hall buzzed. Not because he accepted, but because he said it without pleading, without fear, without trying to bargain. It was not the reaction they wanted. Ward continued, "Humans will protect HFY 9. Humans will protect our people. And humans will do so without disrupting the conquered's corridor traffic." He did not add the obvious, and we will remember this. The feathered one clicked its beak. "Brave little mayflies," it said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They do not understand what they just agreed to." Ward gave a polite nod toward the council, as if he had not heard the insult. He had. He simply refused to be shaped by it. Veilrune leaned back. "The trial will begin at the next corridor cycle," it said. "You will be monitored. Your performance will be recorded. The conquered will decide your status afterward." The lights above the dais faded. The test was set, and the chamber, satisfied, began to drift into other business. To them, humanity's struggle would be a moment of entertainment between trade disputes and border negotiations. But as the human delegation turned to leave, Ward caught another sound. A low whisper through private channels, directed at him alone. His implant translated it with a delay, as if the speaker had tried to hide their signal inside the hall's noise. "Be careful, human." Ward did not turn his head. He kept walking, but his eyes shifted just enough to find the shadowed throne again. The small, blinking-eyed figure watched him steadily. Ward filed that away too. Someone in this hall did not want humans crushed. Someone understood the game. Outside the assembly hall, the corridor air felt different, less heavy, less staged. The human team entered a private chamber assigned to visitors. The doors sealed behind them with a soft hiss, blocking outside sound. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Chen exhaled hard. "They're going to hit HFY, she said. "They're calling it debris, but it's targeted." "It's a message," Ward nodded. "Yes." A younger officer, Lieutenant Sato, looked angry. "We should protest. That colony is still growing. Families are there." Ward met his eyes. "That's why we don't protest. Not here, not like this." Sato frowned. "Why not?" "Because they want us emotional," Ward said simply. "They want us to shout so they can call us unstable. They want us to beg so they can call us weak. We won't give them either." Chen's voice sharpened. "So what do we do?" Ward walked to the small table in the center of the room. He set his case down and opened it. Inside was not a weapon. It was data, compact drives, sealed and protected. Humanity's real tools were not always visible. "We do what humans do," Ward said. "We plan, we coordinate, we protect people." He tapped the table's surface and a hollow map of HFY appeared. Orbital stations, supply routes, atmospheric entry lanes, habitation domes, mining fields. "The Conquered thinks we're simple," Ward continued. "They think we're welded ships and stubborn pilots. They don't see the real advantage." Sato crossed his arms. "Which is?" Ward's expression stayed calm, but his eyes held something harder now. "We don't have one world," he said. "We have a network. We don't have one way of thinking. We have millions. We don't have one tradition. We have adaptation." Chen leaned in, studying the map. "But they're limiting communications." Ward nodded. "Between us and the outside, not inside our own systems. They can delay signals. They can jam certain channels, but they can't stop a prepared structure." He looked at each of them in turn. HFY already has emergency protocols, not because we expected this exact event, but because humans plan for storms, quakes, accidents. We're used to living with danger. We build with it in mind. Sato's anger shifted into focus. "We'll need extra ships." "They think we'll send ships," Ward said. "And we will, but not only ships. We'll send software updates, autonomous guidance, revised traffic rules. We'll use what they don't understand, that humans can turn simple tools into complex solutions." Chen's eyes narrowed. "We'll need permission to move through corridors." Ward smiled faintly, not in humor, but in certainty. "We already have it. They want us to do this without disrupting traffic. That's the rule they gave us. And humans are very good at following rules," Ward said, "in ways that make arrogant people regret the rules they chose." Sato leaned forward. "Sir, what about the debris itself, if it's guided?" "We'll treat it like it is," Ward said. "We'll assume it's hostile physics. We won't accuse without proof, but we will act as if it will strike the most vulnerable points." Chen glanced at him. "You think they'll aim for civilian domes?" Ward's jaw tightened slightly. "They'll aim for pain," he said. "Pain creates fear. Fear creates obedience." He tapped the map again, highlighting HFY orbital elevator and supply stations. "So we shield the lifelines. We reroute supply drops. We reinforce domes. We activate every drone we have. We assign the colony's best pilots. We bring in engineers. We don't wait until the first rock hits." The room fell quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not shock, not helplessness. It was the quiet that came before action. Chen straightened. "The council wants a show," she said. Ward nodded. "Then we give them one," he replied. "Just not the one they expect." He looked toward the sealed door as if he could see through it back to the glittering chamber full of thrones and laughter. "They think humanity is asking for mercy," Ward said softly. "We're not. We're asking for respect." He closed the case and latched it. His voice remained steady, but there was a steel edge in it now. "And if they insist on teaching lessons," he added, "then they're about to learn something too." On HFY, far away, the colony lights glowed like small candles on a new world. Families ate meals, engineers checked generators, pilots filed routine flight plans. Life went on as it always did on the frontier, busy, hopeful, unaware of the politics being played overhead. Above that world in the dark, the debris swarm drifted closer, faint and silent. And on Lyric's prime, the old empires settled into their seats, comfortable in the belief that the galaxy belonged to them. They had not yet understood the difference between a species that merely survived and a species that learned to thrive under pressure. Commander Ward did. The stars around Hestia 9 looked calm, like nothing in the universe cared what the conquered had just decided. From a distance, the planet was a soft green and blue sphere, wrapped in thin white clouds. Its orbit held 3 main stations and a chain of smaller platforms that guided ships down to the surface. Cargo vessels moved in steady lines, bringing food, machines, and people from other human worlds. Everything followed a rhythm that had taken years to build. Inside Orbital Station Haven, Captain Leela Torres floated near a wide window and watched the planet slowly turn below her. She had been born on Earth, but this station felt more like home now. The gentle hum of engines, the quiet voices in the halls, the soft lights that never went completely dark. It was peaceful. That peace broke when her console chimed. She pushed off the wall and glided back to her command seat. The message came through secure human channels marked high priority. Captain Torres, the message read. From Commander Elias Ward, conquered trial confirmed, debris swarm approaching your region. Estimated time to impact window, 48 standard hours. Begin protocol shield. Torres exhaled slowly, so it was real. She tapped the station-wide channel. All hands, she said, keeping her voice steady. This is not a drill. We are entering protective operations. I need every department at readiness level 2. Engineering, start reinforcing outer shields. Flight control, reroute incoming traffic. Civilian services, begin surface notifications. Keep people calm, keep it simple. The response came back in a wave of acknowledgments. No panic, no shouting. Humans were used to storms, to accidents, to things going wrong. They had built a culture around handling problems instead of freezing in front of them. On the surface of Hestia 9, in the main settlement of Greenreach, Governor Arjan Patel stood in front of a group of local leaders. Farmers, engineers, teachers, and transport pilots filled the small hall. They're sending rocks at us, one of the farmers asked, disbelief in his voice. Not like throwing stones, Patel said. More like guiding a storm in space. It's a field of fast-moving debris. If it hits our supply routes or stations, it could cause serious damage. A teacher raised her hand. Are we being attacked? Patel hesitated for a moment, choosing his words. We're being tested, he said, by people who want to see if we can protect ourselves. Murmurs spread through the room. So what do we do? A pilot asked. Patel straightened. We do what humans always do. We work together. We follow the plans. We help our neighbors. We don't panic, and we don't give anyone a reason to say we failed. Above them, in orbit, Captain Torres watched as the first extra ships arrived. Small, fast drones came first, launching from hidden bays in the station's hull. They spread out like a cloud of metal birds, scanning space, mapping the debris field. In the command room, her tactical officer, Mark Reyes, studied the data streams. It's wide, he said. Bigger than we thought, and it's not random. There's a pattern to the movement, Torres nodded. Meaning someone's pushing it. Yeah, Reyes replied. They're not aiming straight at us. They're aiming at our traffic lanes. If they block those, we run out of supplies in weeks. Torres leaned forward. Then we don't let them block anything. On Lyric's prime, Commander Ward stood in a quiet operations room far from the Grand Hall. The room was small, simple, and filled with screens showing human systems across several star systems. Engineers, analysts, and planners worked at stations around him. Status, Ward said. A woman with silver hair looked up. Hestia 9 is activating protocol shield. Drones are mapping the debris. Colony is calm, no major issues. Conquered monitoring? Ward asked. A younger man at another station answered. Heavy, they've got observers on multiple channels. They're watching everything. Ward nodded. Good, let them watch. He turned to a large display that showed the debris field. The swarm looked like a mist of tiny lights, each one a piece of stone or metal moving at dangerous speed. Options? Ward asked. An engineer stepped forward. We can try to push it away with field generators, but that takes a lot of power and time. We can shoot parts of it, but that risks creating more debris. Ward thought for a moment. What about guiding it? The engineer frowned. You mean like steering a river instead of damming it? Yes, Ward said. Can we create safe channels through it? The engineer's eyes lit up. We could deploy beacons, gravitational markers. They'd pull parts of the swarm into specific paths, create corridors for our ships. Do it, Ward said. Back at HFY 9, Tors watched the first beacons launch. They were small, glowing points that drifted out into space, positioning themselves like stars in a new constellation. Reyes looked impressed. We're basically drawing lines in a storm. Tors smiled faintly. Humans have been doing that since the first time we sailed oceans. As the hours passed, the debris field drew closer. From the station windows, it became visible as a faint, shimmering cloud. Not beautiful, not threatening at first glance, just there. On the surface, people gathered in safe zones, not because they were told to hide, but because they were told to be ready. Children watched the sky screens in schools. Workers checked emergency kits. Families stayed connected through local networks. In the conquered chamber, the feathered council member lounged on its throne, watching the live feeds with interest. They're busy, it said, scurrying around. The stone tower diplomat rumbled. They are organizing well. Organizing does not stop physics, the feathered one replied. Let's see how long their little drones last. A quiet figure in the shadows said nothing. It only watched. The first real test came when a cargo ship, the Horizon's Path, approached one of the newly created corridors. Its pilot, Jessa Malik, gripped the controls as her ship moved between two walls of drifting debris. Beacon lock confirmed, she said over the channel. Following the path, outside her view, rocks the size of fists and cars drifted past, held in invisible lanes by the beacon's pull. Easy, Tors said from the station. Nice and slow. Jessa exhaled as the ship cleared the corridor and docked safely. Cheers broke out in the command room. Reyes grinned. First one through. Tors raised a hand. Don't celebrate yet, this is just the start. And she was right. The swarm shifted, data flooded in. The pattern changed. The debris began to push harder against the beacons, like a river rising after a storm. They're adjusting, Reyes said. Someone's changing the field. On Lyric's Prime, Ward watched the same data. They're trying to break the corridors, he said. They didn't expect us to make them. Do we respond? An analyst asked. Ward nodded. Yes, but not by fighting, by learning. Learning what? The analyst asked. How they're pushing, Ward replied. Every move they make tells us something about their tech. Engineers began rewriting software, adjusting beacon behavior in real time. The corridors bent and shifted, not holding the debris back, but flowing with it. On the conquered feeds, the feathered council member leaned forward. They're still moving ships, it said, annoyed. Increase the pressure. A signal pulsed through the debris field. At HFY 9, alarms flared. One beacon flickered and went dark. Beacon 3 is down, Reyes called. Debris breaking through, Tors snapped into action. Launch reserve drones, patch the gap. Small ships shot out, forming a temporary line, their own fields pushing back the rocks just long enough for a new beacon to activate. On the surface, a supply dropship had to turn back, but another route opened moments later. People noticed. They saw the delay. They saw the reroute, but they also saw that the system kept working. In a small home in Greenreach, a child looked up at his mother. Is the sky angry? He asked. She smiled and shook her head. No, the sky is just busy, and so are we. Hours turned into a day. The swarm pressed closer, but the human network adapted. Every change in the debris field led to a change in the corridors. Every broken beacon was replaced. Every blocked route was rerouted. On Lyric's Prime, some council members began to whisper. They're not failing, one said. They're improving, another replied. The feathered one clicked its beak in frustration. It's just endurance, they can't keep this up forever. The shadowed figure finally spoke. Its voice was soft. You do not understand them. The feathered one turned. And you do. I have watched them, the figure said. They do not see this as a battle to win. They see it as a problem to solve, and humans are very good at solving problems. Back at HFY 9, Captain Tors stood in the command room, eyes tired but focused. Reyes handed her a drink pouch. We've been at this for 18 hours. She took a sip. And we haven't lost a single station, he said. Not a single dome. Tors allowed herself a small smile. Good. On Lyric's Prime, Ward watched the same report. They wanted to isolate us, he said to Chen, who stood beside him. They wanted a panic. They wanted a failure they could point to. Chen crossed her arms. Instead, they're watching a system that gets stronger the more they push it. Ward nodded. This is just part 2 of the lesson. Chen glanced at him. And part 3? Ward looked back at the screen, at the debris field, at the lines of human ships moving calmly through the storm. Part 3, he said, is when they realized this wasn't just about protecting a colony. On the Concord feed, the feathered council member stared at the data in silence. The swarm still moved. The humans still moved with it. The debris field no longer looked like a storm. From the windows of Orbital Station Haven, it looked like a moving wall, a slow and silent tide of dark shapes and faint lights. The beacons and drones still held the corridors open, but the pressure against them was growing. Every hour, the invisible push from the Concord's technology became stronger. Captain Leela Torres stood in the center of the command room, her arms folded, eyes fixed on the main display. Her team moved around her, tired but focused. No one complained. No one asked when it would end. They all knew one thing: people on the surface were depending on them. Beacon 7 is showing drift, Reyes said. It's being pulled off position. Torres nodded. Stabilize it. We're trying. The force is stronger than before. Torres took a breath. Then we don't fight it, we ride it. Reyes looked at her. Say again? Adjust the corridor, she said. Let it bend. If they're pushing the swarm, we'll let the path move with it. Reyes blinked, then his face changed as he understood. Like surfing. Exactly, Torres said. Humans didn't cross oceans by stopping waves. We learned to move with them. On Lyrics Prime, Commander Ward watched the same moment unfold. Data flowed across his screen, showing beacon positions shifting in smooth arcs instead of rigid lines. An analyst beside him smiled. They're doing it. The corridors are moving like living things. Ward nodded. Good, let the Concord see that. In the grand chamber, the feathered council member leaned forward, feathers rustling in irritation. They should be overwhelmed by now, it said. Why aren't they overwhelmed? The Stone Tower diplomat rumbled softly. They are not resisting, they are adapting. That is resistance, the feathered one snapped. The shadowed figure spoke again, calm and quiet. No. It is something else. They are turning your test into their tool. The debris field shifted again, and this time it did not just press against the corridors. It split. Two streams formed, moving toward different parts of the human network. On Haven, alarms chimed. Multiple fronts, Reyes said. They're trying to stretch us thin. Torres straightened. Then we don't stay in one place. She tapped her console. Launch mobile beacons. I want the network to move. Small ships launched from hidden bays carrying portable field generators. They spread out, forming a second layer of guidance beyond the main corridors. On the surface, Governor Patel received the update. So the sky is moving, he said, looking at the display. Yes, an engineer replied. But so are we, Patel nodded. Then keep everyone informed. People handle danger better when they understand it. In Greenreach, large screens lit up with simple animations. They showed how the debris moved and how the human systems guided ships around it. Children watched wide-eyed as if it were a game. A young girl pointed. Look, they made a road in space. Her father smiled. Yeah, a road that keeps us safe. Above them, Jessa Malik piloted the Horizon's path again, this time through a moving corridor that curved gently like a river. Her hands stayed steady on the controls. Never thought I'd fly a ship through a storm that listens to us, she said into the channel. Tor's voice came back, tired but warm. Get used to it. Humans have a habit of teaching things to listen. On Lyrics Prime, the Concord's observers began to argue. They are not just surviving, one said. They are learning our systems. They are recording everything, another added. Every signal, every push. The feathered council member waved a wing. So what? They can't do anything with it. The shadowed figure tilted its head. That is what you said when they built ships faster than your scouts. That is what you said when they mapped the outer lanes in half the time. The feathered one fell silent. The real shift came when the debris field did something unexpected. It stopped, not fully. It slowed like a river meeting a wall. On Haven, Reyes stared at the screen. What just happened? Torres frowned. I don't know, but I don't like it. On Lyrics Prime, Ward leaned forward. They're changing strategy, he said. They're going for something else. An analyst pointed. Look at the pattern, the swarm is compressing. Ward's eyes narrowed. They're trying to form a dense core, a hammer instead of a wave. The debris began to cluster, pulling inward, creating a thick, fast-moving mass aimed directly at one of the main orbital stations. Haven, Ward whispered. Torres saw it at the same moment. All hands, she called. We have a focused impact incoming. This is not a drill. We need full shield power now. Engineers rerouted energy from non-essential systems. Lights dimmed in parts of the station as power surged into the outer fields. Rays swallowed. That mass is big, bigger than anything we've handled. Tors nodded. Then we don't handle it alone. She opened a channel. HFY 9 Command, this is Haven. We need surface support. Activate ground-based field generators. On the planet, Patel didn't hesitate. Do it, he told his team. Deep beneath the surface, massive machines woke up. They had been built to stabilize the planet's weak magnetic field, but now they were turned upward, pushing invisible energy into the sky. Above the planet, the space around Haven shimmered. The debris mass hit the edge of the combined fields and slowed, pieces breaking away, sliding off the barrier instead of crashing through it. In the conquered chamber, gasps echoed. They stopped it, someone said. The feathered one stood. That should not be possible. The shadowed figure's voice was steady. It is when a world and a station work as one system. On Haven, the command room held its breath as the mass split, flowing around the station like water around a stone. Rays laughed, half in disbelief. We just turned a planet into a shield. Tors allowed herself a small, tired smile. Welcome to human engineering. On Lyric's Prime, Ward exhaled slowly. Good, he said. Now they see. Chen looked at him. See what? That we don't think in parts, Ward replied. We think in networks. The debris field began to lose its shape. The pressure behind it weakened. The guided force from the conquered faltered. They're pulling back, an analyst said. The push is dropping. In the conquered chamber, the feathered council member sat down heavily. They failed, it muttered. The test is failing. The stone tower diplomat rumbled. No, the test is succeeding, just not for us. The shadowed figure stood for the first time. It stepped into the light, revealing a small, slender form with large, dark eyes. You wanted to teach them humility, it said to the chamber. Instead, you taught them your methods. You showed them how your systems guide, push, and control, and they learned. Faster than you expected. The debris field drifted apart, no longer a weapon, just scattered space dust again. On Haven, cheers filled the command room, not loud, not wild, but full of relief. Tors sat down heavily in her chair. Status, Rays checked the board. All stations intact. No civilian damage, supply routes open, we did it. Tors closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. Good work, everyone. On HFY 9's surface, people stepped outside and looked up at the night sky. It looked normal again, calm, quiet. In Greenreach, the young girl from earlier tugged on her father's sleeve. Did we win? He thought for a moment, then smiled. We didn't lose, and sometimes that's how winning starts. On Lyric's Prime, Ward turned away from the screen and faced Chen. They wanted a failure, he said. They wanted a lesson for the galaxy. Chen nodded. And now the galaxy has won, Ward replied. Just not the one they planned. In the conquered chamber, Veilrune rose slowly from its throne. The trial is not yet complete, it said, its voice less certain than before. The conquered will review the outcome. The feathered council member said nothing. It could not find the words it wanted. The shadowed figure looked toward the human feed, eyes thoughtful. Be careful, it said softly, though no one else seemed to hear. When a small species shows it can stand against a storm, the giants start to wonder what else it can do. On Haven, Tors looked out at the stars again. The debris was gone. The corridors remained, glowing faintly like lines drawn across the dark. Rays joined her. Think they'll leave us alone now? Tors shook her head. No, I think they're just starting to pay attention. Far away on Lyric's Prime, Commander Ward felt the same truth settle in his chest. Humanity had not just protected a colony. They had shown the galaxy that they could turn a test into a lesson, a threat into a system, and a storm into a path. The conquered did not speak for a long time after the debris field faded back into silence. In the grand assembly hall of Lyric's Prime, the living stardome above reflected a calm galaxy once more. The great thrones floated in their usual circle, but something had changed. The confidence that once filled the space had thinned, like air after a storm. Veilrune finally rose, its shifting form slower than before. The trial continues, it said. The humans have demonstrated resilience. The word felt carefully chosen, not praise, not approval, just enough to keep control. The feathered council member clicked its beak. Resilience is not leadership. They defended one colony, that does not make them equals. The stone tower diplomat rumbled. They did more than defend. They connected a planet, a station, and a fleet into one system. That is not common. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The shadowed figure, now standing in full view, watched quietly. Its large eyes moved from throne to throne, measuring reactions. On a distant screen in a smaller human operations room, Commander Elia's ward watched the Conquered feed. Ambassador Chen stood beside him, arms crossed. "They're arguing," she said. "That's new," Ward nodded. "It means they didn't get the result they wanted." On Hestia 9, life slowly returned to normal. Ships followed the glowing corridors, farmers returned to their fields, and children went back to their lessons. But something had changed there too. People walked a little taller. They looked up at the sky not with fear, but with quiet pride. Captain Leela Torres stood on a balcony outside the Haven command room, watching a transport ship glide past. Reyes joined her, holding 2 cups of heated drink. "You earned this," he said, handing her one. She smiled. "We all did." Reyes took a sip. "Think the Conquered is done?" Torres shook her head. "No, that was just the first move. They don't like being surprised." On Lyric's Prime, that truth became clear. Veilrune raised a hand, and the hall quieted. "The Conquered recognizes the human response as effective," it said. "However, there are concerns beyond one system: trade disruptions, political instability." Other empires report changes in their networks during this event. The feathered council member leaned forward eagerly. "Yes, their actions spread beyond their colony. Our systems experienced interference, market delays, signal distortions." Ward frowned slightly at the screen. Chen noticed. "They're blaming us," she said. "They're preparing a second test," Ward replied. Veilrune continued. "The Conquered therefore requests a diplomatic summit. Human representatives will appear in person before affected empires to explain their actions and offer assurances." "Requests," Chen muttered. "Sounds more like a demand." Ward nodded. "It is." On the Conquered floor, a tall, sleek diplomat from a powerful trade empire stood. "If humans wish to be seen as equals," it said, "then they should be able to calm the unrest they have caused." The shadowed figure finally spoke again. "Or perhaps the unrest comes from realizing the old balance can change." Several council members turned toward it. "This is not philosophy," the sleek diplomat said. "This is order." Veilrune lifted a hand. "The decision stands. Humans will attend. A delegation will arrive within one cycle." The feed cut. Chen looked at Ward. "They want to put you in a room full of angry powers." Ward gave a small smile. "They already did that once." Preparations began immediately. On Earth, on Mars, on the scattered human worlds, leaders met through secure channels. They did not argue about whether to go. They discussed who would go and how. Ward stood in a simple room filled with maps and data. Chen and several advisors joined him. "They'll try to corner us," one advisor said. "Get us to make promises we can't keep." "They'll want us to admit fault," another added. Ward listened, then spoke. "We won't go to defend ourselves. We'll go to explain ourselves." Chen raised an eyebrow. "There's a difference." "There is," Ward said. "Defending means we accept their frame. Explaining means we show them ours." A younger officer frowned. "And what frame is that?" Ward tapped the table and a network map appeared. It showed human systems, trade routes, shared research hubs, and defense pacts. "We don't see space as territory," he said. "We see it as connection. When we protected Hestia 9, we didn't push into their systems. We stabilized ours. The ripple they felt was because everything is connected." "So we tell them that?" Chen asked. "Yes," Ward said, "and we show them." The human delegation arrived on Lyric's Prime 2 days later. This time they did not walk alone. Behind Ward and Chen came engineers, economists, pilots, and data specialists. Not soldiers, not warships, people who built and fixed and planned. The Conquered hall filled again, but the laughter was gone. Council members watched in silence as the humans took their place. Veilrune spoke. "The Conquered calls this summit to address the instability caused by human actions." Ward stepped forward. "Commander Elia's ward," he said simply. "Terran Union." The feathered council member interrupted. "Your species interfered with trade systems, communication grids, and economic flows during your demonstration." Ward nodded. "Yes." A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. He had not denied it. "We did," Ward continued, "because we are part of those systems. When pressure was applied to our colony, we adjusted our networks to protect it. The effect traveled along the connections that already existed." The sleek diplomat leaned forward. "So you admit to disrupting the Conquered's balance?" Ward shook his head. "No. I admit that the balance is not as stable as you believed." Murmurs rose. Ward gestured, and a human technician activated a display. It showed a web of trade routes, data lines, and supply chains that spanned multiple empires. "This is your galaxy," Ward said. "Not as separate worlds, but as a shared system. What happens in one place moves through the whole." The Stone Tower diplomat rumbled. "We know this." "Do you?" Ward asked calmly. "Because your trial assumed you could isolate us. You assumed you could apply pressure to one small point without affecting the rest. That assumption failed." The feathered council member snapped. "You speak as if this gives you authority." Ward met its gaze. "I speak as if it gives us responsibility." The shadowed figure's eyes widened slightly. Chen stepped forward. "Humans did not come here to challenge the conquered. We came to join it, but joining means being honest about what the galaxy is becoming." "And what is that?" Veilrune asked. "A network," Chen said. "Not a ladder, not a throne room. A system where strength comes from connection, not just age or size." The sleek diplomat scoffed. "Pretty words," Ward nodded. "They are, so let me show you something less pretty." The display changed. It showed data from the debris event. Signal patterns, control pulses, the hidden guidance that had pushed the swarm. Several council members leaned forward. "You used this technology," Ward said, "or something like it to test us, to guide a natural hazard." The feathered one stiffened. "You have no proof." Ward tapped the screen. "We mapped the signals, we adapted to them, we learned how they worked." The chamber fell into a heavy silence. The Stone Tower diplomat spoke slowly. "If humans can read our systems, they can influence them." Ward nodded. "Yes." A wave of tension swept through the room. "But we chose not to," Ward continued. "We chose to protect our people instead of exploiting what we learned." The shadowed figure stepped forward. "That is the point you are missing," it said to the others. "They could have turned this into a weapon. They turned it into a shield." The feathered council members' feathers rustled. "Or they are simply waiting." Ward shook his head. "If we wanted power over you, we wouldn't be standing here talking." Veilrune studied him. "Then what do you want?" Ward did not answer immediately. He looked around the chamber, at the ancient beings, the proud empires, the quiet watchers. "We want a seat," he said. "Not above you, not below you, with you." The sleek diplomat laughed. "And you think this performance earns that?" Ward's voice stayed calm. "No, I think this conversation starts it." The shadowed figure moved closer to the center. "I support their petition," it said. "Not because they are strong, but because they are aware." Several council members reacted at once. "You would side with them?" the feathered one demanded. The figure nodded. "Yes, because a species that sees the galaxy as a shared system will protect it better than one that sees it as a prize." Veilrune raised a hand. "The conquered will deliberate." The hall lights dimmed slightly as private channels opened between the thrones. Whispers filled the air, some sharp, some uncertain. Ward and Chen stood together, waiting. Chen leaned closer. "No matter what they decide, we changed something." Ward nodded. "Yes, they can't go back to laughing." Minutes passed, long ones. Finally, Veilrune rose again. "The conquered acknowledges humanity's perspective," it said carefully. "We will grant provisional status, observers with limited authority. Your species will be monitored." The feathered council member clicked its beak in clear displeasure. Ward inclined his head. "That is acceptable." Chen blinked. She had expected resistance, not agreement. As the hall began to disperse, several smaller delegations approached the humans quietly. A trader offered a cautious greeting. A scientist asked about human network models. Even the Stone Tower diplomat gave a slow nod. The shadowed figure lingered. "You walked into a room of giants," it said softly to Ward. "And you did not try to become one." Ward met its eyes. "Giants fall," he said. "Systems last." The figure smiled, a small, strange expression. "Perhaps the galaxy needs more system builders." On Hestia 9, Captain Torres received the news through a secure channel. "Provisional status," Reyes read. "That's it," Torres smiled. "That's a door, and humans are good at opening doors wider." On Earth, on Mars, and on the far colonies, people heard the same message. Humanity had not been crowned. They had not been rejected. They had been acknowledged. On Lyric's Prime, as the last lights dimmed in the Grand Hall, Veilrune remained alone for a moment. It looked up at the stardome, at the endless points of light. "A small species," it murmured to itself, "with a very large way of thinking." Far away in the quiet of space, the corridors around Hestia 9 still glowed faintly, lines drawn across the dark. Not as walls, the galaxy had changed, though most beings did not yet realize it. From the quiet observation decks of Orbital Station Haven, Captain Leela Torres watched a sky that once threatened to crush them. Now it was calm, the debris field dispersed, the corridors glowing faintly as if the stars themselves marked a path for human ships. Around her, crew members moved through the station with the confidence of people who had not just survived a trial, but had turned it into a lesson. Reyes approached her, holding a tablet with the latest reports. All colonies report stable conditions. Trade is resuming along the rerouted paths. Communications are fully restored. Torres nodded, taking a deep breath. And the Conquered? Provisional status confirmed, he said. They're watching us, yes, but differently. Differently, Torres repeated. She thought about the faces in the Lyric's prime chamber, the ancient ones who had mocked, the proud empires who had expected fear. She remembered their laughter and the calm patience of the shadowed figure who had quietly seen what humans were capable of. It's not about being watched, it's about being understood. Far below, on the surface of HFY 9, life was returning to routine. Children played under the soft glow of artificial lights, farmers returned to their fields, engineers checked the repairs to supply lines. The city hummed with activity, not fear. People spoke quietly of what had happened, not as a disaster, but as a moment that reminded them of human ingenuity and courage. Governor Arjun Patel stood on the observation deck of the central tower, looking up at the orbiting station. "We didn't just survive," he said to his team. "We learned, we adapted, and we proved ourselves." A young engineer smiled. "It almost feels like the whole galaxy is watching us differently now," Patel nodded. "They are, but we have to keep moving forward. Calm and steady, just like we did before." In the distant expanse of space, the Conquered had convened again. This time, the atmosphere in the grand chamber of Lyric's Prime was markedly different. Veilrune hovered in the center, its form shifting slowly, carefully, and the great thrones around it were still, almost cautious. The laughter that once echoed through the halls was gone. It had been replaced by an unfamiliar tension, the kind that comes when a species refuses to bow and yet refuses to fight unnecessarily. The feathered council member sat forward, feathers ruffling, an expression of unease crossing its elongated face. "We underestimated them," it admitted almost to itself. "They are not merely resilient," the Stone Tower diplomat said. "They anticipate, they adapt, they teach themselves from every situation, and they protect not for power but for responsibility." The shadowed figure nodded, its dark eyes watching the human delegates on the screen. "Do you understand now why they are dangerous to complacency?" The feathered one clicked its beak, still uneasy. "Dangerous, yes, but they are honorable." The Conquered, with all its ancient history and pride, had to reconsider its assumptions. Humanity was not a species to mock, nor one to underestimate. They were something else entirely, a species that thrived on connection, problem-solving, and adaptability. They had taken a trial designed to humiliate and transformed it into a network of protection. They had turned a natural hazard, guided by malicious intent, into an opportunity to show coordination and ingenuity. Back at HFY 9, Captain Torres watched the last drones complete their final circuits around the station. Every supply route had been secured. Every transport ship was safely docked. Every beacon maintained its position. For the first time in 48 hours, the calm in her command room was genuine. Reyes leaned against a console. "It's finished," Torres shook her head, smiling faintly. "It's never finished, but it's stable. And we've shown the galaxy what humans can do when faced with impossible odds." On the surface, Governor Patel addressed the settlement through public channels. "People of HFY 9, he said, today we have not just survived. We have demonstrated the strength of our cooperation, the value of planning, and the importance of unity. Our planet, our stations, and our people are safe. Let this be a reminder, humanity can rise to any challenge." Families gathered to watch his message. In homes, schools, and workplaces, citizens felt a quiet pride, the kind that comes from knowing one has faced danger and acted with skill, calm, and courage. Far away, the Conquered deliberated. Veilrune finally addressed the chamber. "Humanity has passed the initial test. They have demonstrated strategy, resilience, and responsibility. The Conquered will grant provisional observer status, with limited authority. Their actions have reminded us that no species should be underestimated, regardless of its age, size, or technology." The shadowed figure added quietly, almost as an observation. "They could have used this trial to dominate. Instead, they protected. That is what makes them strong. The feathered council member, still uncomfortable, muttered, "They forced us to reconsider our arrogance." Ward stood quietly beside Chen in the human observation room. They had seen the Concord's decision come through secure channels. Provisional status meant access to communication channels, limited participation in interstellar councils, and a formal recognition of humanity's systems. Not dominance, not supremacy, just acknowledgement. Chen looked at Ward. "Do you think they understand what we're capable of?" Ward shook his head slightly. "Some will, some never will, but they know enough to be cautious." He thought of the debris field, the beacons, the careful coordination, the network that spanned the planet and the orbital station. He thought of the calm determination of every human who had followed orders without panic, and he knew this was only the beginning. "Now we start building," he said softly. "Not walls, not weapons, systems, networks. Connections that make every human world stronger and every challenge manageable." Tours watched the transport ships leave the corridors, carrying supplies to colonies across the sector. Each successful journey was a demonstration, silent and clear. Humans did not just survive, they thrived. On Lyrix Prime, some council members began approaching the humans cautiously, asking questions about techniques, technologies, and planning. Even the proudest empires had to learn from the species they had once mocked. The shadowed figure stepped closer towards communication feed. "You walked into a room of giants," it said, "and you did not bow, you did not fight, you built." Ward smiled faintly. "Sometimes that is enough." On Hestia 9, the sky darkened as night fell. The stars glimmered above, seemingly indifferent to politics, empires, and trials. Yet every light reminded the colonists that humanity had proven something important, that even the smallest worlds, guided by clever minds and steady hands, could influence the fate of the galaxy. Tors looked at the stars and said softly, "We didn't just protect Hestia 9. We showed the galaxy how humans think. And that," Reyes said beside her, "is more powerful than any weapon." Ward, far away in the human operations room, watched the Concord feeds. He allowed himself a rare moment of quiet satisfaction. The galaxy had laughed at humans once. Now it would never do so again, not because humans ruled it, not because they had power over others, because humanity had changed the rules. They had turned trials into lessons, threats into networks, and arrogance into understanding. And in that quiet, patient way that humans always had, they had reminded the galaxy of a simple truth: survival was not enough. Adaptation, unity, and intelligence were what made a species worthy of respect. For the first time, some of the Concord's greatest powers realized that they were no longer the only masters of strategy. They had a new example in the stars: humans, steady and relentless, building a future one system at a time. In homes, stations, and colonies across human space, people went about their daily lives, unaware that history had shifted. They repaired, they studied, they built. They taught children, engineered supply lines, and navigated space. They were doing the ordinary yet extraordinary work of humans, preparing for tomorrow while facing today. And in quiet corners of the galaxy, where ancient empires watched the humans closely, a new respect took root. It was not fear, not dominance, and not subjugation. It was something far stronger: acknowledgement. The galaxy, once arrogant and dismissive, had been reminded that humans were not to be mocked. They were to be considered, studied, and respected, not because they had weapons or wealth or age, but because they could take any challenge, any obstacle, and turn it into a system that worked, not just for themselves, but for everyone connected to them. Commander Ward stood silently as reports continued to come in. Across human space, every system functioned smoothly. Every colony knew its role, every network maintained balance. Chen stepped beside him. "Do you think they understand fully?" Ward shook his head slightly, a small smile on his lips. "No, but they understand enough to know humans are not to be trifled with. And that is the first step." Tors on Hestia 9 watched the stars in the night sky, a quiet glow reflecting in her eyes. "We didn't just survive," she whispered to herself. "We reminded the universe who humans are." And somewhere far across the galaxy, where ancient empires had once laughed, silence fell. Not out of fear, not entirely, but out of respect. Because humanity had not bowed, humanity had not begged, humanity had simply acted. And that, more than anything, was enough to make the galaxy pause and to make it listen. The stars continued to shine, indifferent yet witness to the truth that humans had carved into the cosmos, that they were not to be mocked, underestimated, or dismissed. They were to be respected, and in that quiet, enduring way the galaxy began to change. Humans had arrived, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as a species that could teach giants humility without ever kneeling, that could solve storms without rage, and that could build a future without fear. The galaxy would never forget it, and neither would humanity. The stars stretched endlessly above Hestia 9, over Earth, over Mars, over every human colony. Lines of light traced pathways across the void, corridors of knowledge, communication, and connection that now linked human worlds in a vast network stronger than any weapon. And humanity, quiet but relentless, moved through the stars, steady, prepared, and determined to shape its destiny, not by domination but by ingenuity, cooperation, and resolve. The universe had laughed once. It would never laugh at humans again. Because now it had learned what humans could do when they were forced to act, forced to adapt, and forced to survive.